Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today we're doing another part in the Is It Worth Doing series. Now, I've done a lot of main dungeons that were released in main updates. You know, I've done Camelung Village, I did Barkingham Palace, and I did technically side quests. But today I want to go over a more obscure dungeon and a dungeon that is a very old dungeon. And that definitely makes it a bit iffy on whether it's worth it, because usually older gear isn't as good as the newer gear. You know, meta, things weren't decided yet, all that. Today, I want to go over Briskbreeze Tower. Now, Briskbreeze Tower is a very old dungeon. You unlock it at level 50, and it was released definitely over a decade ago now. So today, I want to go over, you know, what it is, how to do it, and to answer their question, is it worth doing? So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting off at, again, level 50, you unlock Briskbreeze Tower. Now, the way to initiate the quest is you come here to Sergeant Muldoon. I believe you need to have finished Colossus Boulevard first to actually accept the quest, which makes sense because the Briskbreeze Tower is in Colossus Boulevard, so you accept it from Sergeant Muldoon. Sergeant Muldoon talks about a guard, Lieutenant Culpepper, who has gone missing. He reported for duty in Colossus Boulevard a few weeks ago and then mysteriously disappeared and never came back. He wants to know what happened, so you go to Private O'Doyle, ask, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, go ask Mindy Pixie Crown, she might know. You ask Mindy, she's like, yeah, he's a pretty cool dude, I don't really know where he went, I think he went into Briskbreeze Tower. And then I believe you talk to the guy next to Briskbreeze Tower, and he's like, yes, he went into Briskbreeze Tower to kind of check some stuff out. So with that knowledge in mind, you need to save him from Briskbreeze Tower, which is right here. Again, a level 50 dungeon. Now, what is Briskbreeze Tower? Because that's important to know. Technically, it is an 11-floor tower. Only 9 of those are actually battles, though. You have this first floor here with Darren Whisperwind, who gives this classic, very old, these bosses will cheat message.
You will need people to complete this at the appropriate level.
These are in a lot of the older dungeons, these guys who just kind of are like, yeah, these guys cheat. It was definitely because, you know, at the time, cheating bosses were new, and you can see it says you'll need 4 people. Nowadays, you definitely don't need 4 people. You could complete it with 2 level 50s if you want to, and you could definitely complete it with 1 level 130. So a lot of enemies in Briskbreeze Tower aren't particularly strong, especially if you are a higher level. I would put the mobs on, say, Celestia level, a little bit lower than Celestia level, around Dragonspire level actually. They have around 1000 health, nothing too insanely difficult. 4-pip AoEs will take them down easily, even at level 50. So realistically, mob fights, nothing too much to worry about. They don't give particularly any interesting drops to mob fights, so there's nothing particularly interesting for me to comment on, but you could see, you go through it pretty fast. Nothing too special. Just 4-pip AoE and power through the tower. There's another floor down. You got a level 45 ring, nothing too special from that battle. Next up, we have this floor. There are some health wisps in the background. You can actually get them if you're fast enough, but they will disappear after you finish this battle. So if you need health wisps, I don't know if I would exactly trust this. You definitely want potions if you're scared of dying in this tower, but you could potentially get the health wisps here. I can't because I have not been damaged yet, because obviously I'm a level 150 doing a tower meant for level 50s. But again, all these battles, really easy. Just breeze through them. Brisk breeze through them. Man, I'm really creative first thing in the morning. You can see here, you can collect the wisps. I don't know when they disappear, but I was told that they disappear. Maybe it's after you first collect them. So finally, we get to our first boss. Anger's Hollow Soul here is a rank 8 fire boss. Now, as the tower mentioned, this is a cheating boss, and the bosses in this tower do cheat. Now, I will say, they are about what you'd expect from a level 50 dungeon. They aren't any particularly strange cheats or anything particularly scary. This guy has 2 main cheats. The first of which is that every 2 rounds, he will cast a weakness on a player. So you can see there, I now have a weakness. He cast weakness on me first round, so now I have 2 weaknesses. The second main cheat is at the end of every 4th round, he will summon a minion, and that minion will become active 2 rounds later. Now this cheat, realistically, if you do it fast enough, won't even come into play, because as you can see here, I'm going to end up beating him before he even gets to summon one. Even at level 50, I imagine most of you are also probably going to beat him before he manages to summon one. So it's not a particularly important cheat, but if you do you want to avoid it, that's how. Just beat him as fast as you can, but otherwise, it's not particularly challenging cheat. He summons like a minion with 800 health, whatever. Now, this guy drops some level 45 decks. They're not anything too special. They don't give any particularly special slot, or they don't give any stats. They're just a random level 45 deck. That is his main drop. He doesn't really drop anything else of interest. And here goes this round of enemies. And we move on to the next floor. And there goes another floor of enemies. This is very samey and like what a lot of towers were at this part of the game. This is actually something you notice a lot in, say, Dragonspire, is there's just towers with a lot of enemies that realistically kind of suck. Now we get to the next floor. This floor is technically a puzzle floor, I would say, but it's nothing too special. Basically what this is if you collect all the blue wisps, the door will open. If you collect any of the green wisps, it will summon 2 enemies. Nothing particularly interesting, I would say. Just collect all the blue wisps and the door should open. Yep, there you go. Door opens, and now there's more blue wisps. I don't know why you would need mana at this point, but you might need mana. And then you get to the penultimate floor, where you are fighting another round of enemies. Again, nothing particularly interesting. Now, I would say, and continuing on with my thought before next floor, this is actually probably my least favorite kind of dungeon in Wizard101, and I'm glad that they largely stopped doing these, where it's a massive tower, and that tower just has 4 enemies on each floor. Really feels incredibly samey and just kind of boring. Even at level 50, it's not that much of a challenge. You just spam your 4-pip AoE and it's done. And I just have never particularly liked them. I didn't like them in Dragonspire and I don't like them now. Next up, we have Orrick Nightglider here, and this is the final boss of the tower. So I'm going to pull up his full cheat list here if you want to look at it, but I will say there's anything you particularly want to worry about, but I'll go over the main ones anyway. So first off, if wards are placed on him, he will cleanse ward himself. So technically no fainting unless you have an indemnity feint, which at level 50 you realistically won't. I believe if this is like other bosses at the time, mass feint will not trigger this cheat. So if you have mass feint, go for it. Death prisms will not trigger this cheat. So if you're a death, you can prism. Mass traps, okay, yeah, mass traps won't trigger this cheat, so again, if you have mass feint, you can use that. At the start of every 4th round, he will interrupt cast an enhanced version of Meteor Strike. This just does more damage than average. When his health drops below 4,000, he will begin interrupt using Meteor Strike at the beginning of every 3rd round. Some other things about delaying. When his health is above 4,000, he will interrupt cast an enhanced version of Heckhound on the wizard with the greatest threat every 3 rounds. If his health drops below 4,000, then 3 stompers will join the duel at the end of the round and become active 2 rounds later, so these are just minions. When his health is between 4,000 and 2,000, he will interrupt cast a minus 65% version of Tower Shield on himself whenever he is damaged, so nothing too particularly interesting. You can use Pierce if you want to remove that. At the beginning of every round after his health drops below 2,000 and every 3 rounds after, he will interrupt use the same version of Heckhound from before on the wizard, followed by an enhanced version of Earthquake that only deals damage. It does like 700 damage, doesn't remove blades. And finally, if Orrick heals himself using a life drain spell to raise himself back to one of his higher health tiers, the cheats that were active the previous tiers will not reactivate. So that's his main cheat. Nothing particularly interesting, I would say. The main thing you need to worry about is potentially his health getting low enough for him to summon another thing. I would say that the main thing to actually do here, and what I would personally recommend, is blading up a little bit and then just hitting him with a massive hit. If you just hit him with a massive hit, then none of his health cheats even matter in the slightest. That's what I would do, and that's what I'm going to do right here, as you can see. I would say that that's the main strategy here. There's nothing really too much to worry about besides it. This is a level 50 dungeon, so you can see they'll spam weaknesses all the time, which is annoying. He's basically just a souped up Dragonspire boss, probably more on the level of Celestia bosses, with some cheats that probably were difficult at the time, but nowadays just aren't difficult in the slightest. And I mean this hands down, even if you're level 50 and not level 150, this dungeon is not difficult. It's not difficult in the slightest. This was designed back when level 50 gear was the highest gear, and the level 50 gear was the gear drop from Malastare. It's nothing like super interesting and super special, and this gear was much weaker. Like the highest damage was probably in the 50s or 60s at this point. Okay, you can see he's summoned his stompers, so I'm just gonna pass. It's nothing like, say, Zigzag bosses, or say even Barkingham Palace bosses. This guy is probably on level with the Barkingham Palace bosses, despite being 10 levels higher. And you can see here, I beat him pretty handily. Fight's over, and you can see I got 2 rings here, and we can move on and finally rescue Lieutenant Culpepper. Now, one quick thing that I'd like to mention as lore-wise that's actually really interesting before I get into the drops and is it worth it, is the fact that Lieutenant Culpepper here, you give him a keychain that is dropped by the Wraith you just beat, and one of them is a key with hieroglyphs. And this guy says, I don't know exactly what's going on, but they said their next target was Krakatopia. And funny enough, once you do the zigzag quest, you are sent there to get a key with hieroglyphs. So the story of Briskbreeze Tower and zigzag are actually connected pretty loosely. I don't know exactly what this major threat is, and their next target is Krakatopia, but something's going on here, and I don't know if this storyline actually is continued on beyond that. I just know that Briskbreeze and zigzag are connected. First things first, let's go over the drops. As you can imagine, this dungeon is very old, and the drops are not meant for the modern age. There is one exception to this. That final wraith there actually drops a level 50 ring that is part of the Celestian set. Now, why this is interesting is because it actually gives damage and a lot of power pip. Like, this is a good level 50 ring, and when I look up how to get it, he is the only drop that's listed. So you might only actually be able to get it from him, and it might be worth it to get some of these rings. You can see that they're actually really good for level 50. Potentially, you might want to farm for it. At some point, they upgraded his loot table. I don't know when. I imagine when they made this set, the Celestian set, they needed to give it to a boss, and they were like, why not the boss at Briskbreeze Tower? You can get that, but otherwise, there is literally 0 drops in this dungeon. If you want any other drop besides that, yeah, it's not worth doing. But let's ask the ultimate question. Is this dungeon worth doing? No, not at all, honestly. I mean, I know that that's probably not that surprising, but this dungeon doesn't really have that many drops. It does have that 1 ring. It doesn't give any XP. The XP is like 200, so nothing particularly special. It takes a little bit. Like, it definitely doesn't take a short amount of time. It took me a level 150, like 15 minutes to do it, which I know doesn't seem crazy, but at a level 50, it would probably take double that. So like 30 minutes to do this dungeon, which just realistically isn't worth it for that 1 ring drop. You get a better ring drop anyway at level 56. It's just really not worth it overall, I would say. It's an interesting little side tower, a tower that most people probably haven't done, but that doesn't mean that it's worth doing, to be completely honest. You get a badge for it. If you're badge hunting, one of the Wizard City badges is Briskbreeze Champion, but that's really it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you discover this tower for the first time now? Did you always know that this existed? Did I give you some interesting info? But that's it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.